good afternoon, everybody. I'm very happy to have a new webinar today, and we are having it with together with a very good friend of mine, Professor Serge Verstovsek, and I think we know each other since more over 10 years, and I still remember that when I knew you, that you were in your office there, in front of a computer, and we had our chat about new products, about clinical trials. And I think you are one of a few researchers who has been involved in nearly all of the new products which we are having today as treatment. I think you were even involved in the YAC2 discovery. And but all the new products which we're having, ruxolitinib, pacritinib, etc. You were all very heavily involved. I always called you were the center of clinical trials. So, everybody who had questions about clinical trials, they all came to you, and you were just informed about everything. So it was for people like us as a patient organization. It was always, fantastic to talk to you because in 1 hour interview we got all the information of what is happening in the market, and this was really something very fantastic. So Serge, very very welcome. It's I know when you stopped working at university, some people said that you have been retiring, and I always said, well, I know Serge. I don't think that he will retire. And as it turns out later on, well, you joined Cardos, and I just wanted to congratulate Cardos, to have a person like Serge, in his organization, which doesn't mean that the others are less. I don't want to make anybody angry, but it's you have a tremendous knowledge of our Ampian world. So, Serge, welcome. The last thing which I didn't said, but you are the Chief Medical Officer, the CMO of Cardos, and now I leave it up to you. So we have agreed that first, you will share the screen and you will make your presentations, and then we will see about some questions. Otherwise, I have some questions prepared for you. Thank you very much for coming.
Well, Peter, thank you so much for such a wonderful introduction. You're so kind, and I cherish our long-term relationship and friendship. This is going to continue regardless where I am. Life is unpredictable. I did have, like you said, a fantastic time at MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, and I did actually participate, like you said, in a number of efforts to develop new drugs, ruxolitinib, aumolertinib, pacritinib, ROPEG interferon, and others. But then I decided to, actually I did officially retire and join Cartos because, as you will hear in a simplified way, I wanted to participate in development of the drug that has a potential to be combined with a JAK inhibitors to enhance the outcome of the patients with myelofibrosis. So to be on a business side, the bright side, some say.
Okay.
The others say the other way around. But I have fun still, and who knows what is going to happen.
Well, nobody knows, but the importance is that we keep up the friendship. You're right.
This is just the intro slide, but you can see what is going to happen here in the next few minutes. I'm going to be talking about what is in the left upper corner. The study is called POIESIS, and it is the study in patients with myelofibrosis with completely novel study design to optimize the care of patients with myelofibrosis. That is the main reason why I have changed from leading the development of the medications from academic standpoint when I was in the university, like you described, to a Cartos, a privately held small company, for me with the best team and best trial design, novel trial design, and best medication that can help our patients with myelofibrosis at this point in time, as you will see. So let me just give you a little story about what this medication, which is called Navtemadlin, is all about. I'm going to start the story by looking at this particular cartoon, which depicts to the right the DNA, this purple and reddish is the DNA, and the yellow is the protein which is called p53. And the title of the slide tells you what the p53 actually is: guardian of the genome. Many will associate this with Guardian of the Galaxy. I always make a little bit of fun stuff out of the serious science. And this is one of those guardians. This one is Guardian of the genome, because the yellow activated p53 protein will go along the DNA and look for abnormalities. And abnormalities are listed to the left. And when it finds the abnormalities, like it is in red color, then it will stop, and it will stop that cell cycle arrest, and that it will try to repair it, or it will lead to the cellular apoptosis, which is to the right. That means cellular or cell death. So it leads to cell death when there is something abnormal. This is normal function of p53 protein. That's why we say it's a guardian of the genome. Very important. But of course, it is regulated, like everything in the body is, by the protein which is called MDM2. MDM2 regulates the p53, a critical tumor suppressor protein. p53 is a tumor suppressor protein, because if you allow all these abnormalities to happen, you have a cancer, right? p53 is the guardian. That's why we call it guardian. And normally, p53 responds to the presence of cancer or abnormalities and leading cell to death. But when you have too much of MDM2 protein, then the p53 activity is suppressed. It doesn't work. So let me summarize this in this slide, the next slide. So p53, the yellow color that I showed before, is the protein which is tumor suppressor protein, controls in our body what happens and controls the cancer, right, coming up. And then the MDM2, the orange blob, is the protein that inhibits p53. And it's known, very well known, that in myelofibrosis, as in many other cancers, but we are talking about myelofibrosis today, MDM2 levels are highly, highly expressed. And it prevents p53 from carrying out its usual function, right? And that's why the myelofibrosis happens, among many other reasons, but that's one of the main reasons. So Navtemadlin, a medication that Kartos is developing, is shown in blue. Navtemadlin basically binds, as you can see on the cartoon, to the MDM2, inhibiting the inhibitor of p53. So Navtemadlin is inhibitor of MDM2, inhibiting the MDM2 activity on p53. That's simply to remember, inhibitor of an inhibitor of p53. Now, in myelofibrosis, that should work, and it does so far in clinical studies. That's why we are talking about the phase 3 study for approval of Navtemadlin. I'll tell you all about this now. Now, the patients has to have a functional p53 protein. What does this mean? If the p53 itself is mutated, then the Navtemadlin is not going to work. Good news is, if there is no good news usually, but in MF patients, myelofibrosis patients, hardly anybody has the mutation in the p53 itself, and therefore more than 95% of the myelofibrosis patients should respond to Navtemadlin because they have normal wild type, that's how it's called, p53. Important information to know. Okay, so if the MDM2 is highly expressed, and you can see this in the circle to the right, in the middle of that circle, MDM2, p53, MDM2 highly expressed, it inhibits the p53, then the disease can flourish. And the disease has a lot of different characteristics. You can see here to the perhaps right upper corner, myelofibrosis cell proliferation. We can actually measure. These are so-called progenitor cells in the blood, which can be measured by numbers. Next in the circle is the bone marrow fibrosis. Everybody knows that's how the disease is called, right? Myelofibrosis. Myelo stands for the bone marrow, and fibrosis is myelofibrosis. What myelofibrosis does is decreases the function of the normal cells that are still there. So anemia, thrombocytopenia, that happens. And then the reaction to the malfunctioning bone marrow is the enlargement in the spleen, enlargement in the liver, right? And the next in the cycle is increase in the pro-inflammatory cytokines. Cytokines are proteins that come out of the cells and cause inflammation. Everybody knows, unfortunately, living with the myelofibrosis, that symptoms are a significant problem. Itching, night sweating, bone aches and pains, cachexia develop, fever, fatigue, a lot of different symptoms. And the next in circle is, it says MF tumor burden. That means the number of the cells that myelofibrosis affects is increasing, and it's associated with these mutations, calreticulin, MPL, and the JAK2 mutation. We can actually measure how many cells have a mutation in patient samples. So this is all tied together. And if you would inhibit the MDM2, all of this would be going down because you allow p53 to work. And we know that that actually is the case from the patient samples that we obtained on previous studies with Navtemadlin, the MDM2 inhibitors. Now, why are we in this study, going back to the clinical study, combining the Navtemadlin with the JAK inhibitor ruxolitinib? Majority of myelofibrosis patients that are treated with ruxolitinib or other approved JAK inhibitors do benefit, but benefit from that JAK inhibitors to some degree. It doesn't work forever. I have been talking about this since the beginning of the development of ruxolitinib. I led the development from the academic side, as Peter, you mentioned, the ruxolitinib, and it works, but not for too long. And in many, it is not optimally improving the spleen and symptoms. So many patients have a suboptimal response. This is what we are talking about today. So clinical activity of navtemadlin so far in clinical studies have shown that even alone or in a combination with ruxolitinib can significantly decrease the spleen, can significantly improve the symptoms, those two characteristics that we always talk about. And in addition, because how it works biologically that I explained, it can actually demonstrate disease-modifying activity. That means it can improve the bone marrow fibrosis, it can reduce the number of myelofibrosis cancer cells in the blood, and it can reduce the levels of inflammatory cytokines, all tied together with the clinical benefit. And so therefore we are super excited. Myself, that's one of the main reasons I have joined the company, because I have seen that that is a real possibility, which would then extend the optimal care of the patients with myelofibrosis and reduce all these markers and provide the clinical benefit for as long as possible, right? We want to optimize the care of our patients. We talked about this many times, you and I, Peter. What's the goal? Make the disease as chronically possible, as chronically as possible with a good quality of life, right? Okay.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes the medication can cause some irritation of gastrointestinal tract or lower the blood cell count, but that can be effectively managed. It does not prevent optimal delivery of navtemadlin to a patient. Now, so the study POIESIS then is perhaps a strange title for it, but it has the good reason for it. It is emergence of something that did not previously exist. In a sense that there is a new mechanism of action. The drugs that we mentioned are in the past that they were developed were JAK inhibitors. They inhibit this JAK-STAT pathway, a highway. Remember that we talked about it, highway that makes cells grow as well. And it lowers the growth of the cells, but it does not change the biology of the disease. And here we have something different, and we have a new study designed to prove the point that we can actually change the biology of disease, prevent progression perhaps, and extend the survival perhaps. And POIESIS also includes the acronym of P53 activation, which I talked about it, to optimize responses in myelofibrosis. So it recapitulates what I was trying to say in the title of the study itself. Yeah, so this is really important. And it's easy to remember. I think everybody would love to say, hey, I am participating in a POIESIS study to do something more for my condition, to optimize the care and improve it for as long as possible. So the study is present across the globe. As you can see here, this is as of yesterday, 229 sites across the 19 countries, and we are still opening more sites. We don't want to take too long to develop this medication, Navtemadlin, for patients with myelofibrosis. We want to expand the number of sites, maybe 250, maybe more. More countries are being added. You can see here the list of countries that are open. And later on, I'm going to show you the slide with links where anybody can go and see the details of the study and the study sites. There is the link you will see in US and in Europe as well. And we have our own site that can help with information. But just to give you perspective that we are not shy in providing these medications as fast as we can to the patients through the study, and then if it gets approved, to the broader range of patients across the globe. Now, so we are enrolling patients, but we are only at the beginning. And we are focusing on the patients that, as I try to explain, that have a suboptimal response while they are on ruxolitinib, a JAK inhibitor that is pretty much standard first-line therapy for patients with myelofibrosis to counteract the spleen and symptoms. And many people, patients with myelofibrosis, do improve with ruxolitinib. I was first one to see its benefit in the clinic. First 3 patients ever on ruxolitinib were in my clinic in 2007. But it is in many patients suboptimal. Still presence of the spleen, still presence of the symptoms. That's what the suboptimal response is. We want to have optimal. That means much better than that. If we can eliminate those spleen and symptoms, that would be perfect, right? And in that setting, there are no approved therapies at all. Of course, we do look at the blinded randomized study. That's the requirement, where we're going to be comparing Navtemadlin, adding it on top of ongoing therapy with ruxolitinib versus placebo on top of ruxolitinib. And standard eligibility for participation applies. Patients, as you see, 18 years of age. They do have a full-fledged diagnosis of primary or secondary, which means after ET or after PV, myelofibrosis. And the key is not already on a JAK inhibitors, any JAK inhibitors, JAK inhibitors naive patients, right? And there are other characteristics like normal liver, normal kidney, the usual thing for participation in a clinical study. So let me tell you about the design, because this is totally different than any study design so far, and perhaps comes from the clinical experience, and also it comes from willingness of the regulatory bodies. I'm talking about FDA in the United States that regulates drug development, to listen to the clinicians and the patients and say, perhaps there is a better way to prove the benefit of new therapies. And this is the consequence of that effort. So there are 2 parts to it. That's first slide. If you look at the schema, you have here to the left enrollment. Patients that are in need of therapy, have a spleen and symptoms, and are not on therapy with JAK inhibitor yet. That's very important. I repeat it. They get to have an MRI done and a questionnaire to answer questions about the symptoms. So we know what their symptoms and the spleen size is before enrollment. Then they are given ruxolitinib. That's the blue box. They're given ruxolitinib by the local doctor the way that the local doctor wants it. That is called a run-in period for 18 to 24 weeks, 5-6 months. Why? Because we know with the ruxolitinib, as you know, patients know, I published that and others followed, that within 3 months you get what you get with ruxolitinib. So we said, okay, give it for 5 to 6 months, make sure that ruxolitinib did what it did. You have a new MRI here in the middle, assessment. You have a new MRI, you look at the spleen and symptoms and say who has optimal response, who has suboptimal response. If the patient has optimal response, very small spleen, very few symptoms left or none, that's optimal. Let that patient be. Don't touch it. Doesn't need anything. God forbid the patient has progression, refractory patients, they need something else. Others that still have some symptoms and a spleen are suboptimal. Right? This is how we come up with a suboptimal group of patients that are the target of the investigation of a new drug, right? So we have objective way of knowing what happened, and we know what the time frame for assessment is. And then those patients that are suboptimal are randomized for 6 months. They are given Navtemadlin or placebo in a blinded way, randomized 2-to-1. That means 66% chance to get Navtemadlin, and 33% of the patients will get placebo on top of ongoing therapy with ruxolitinib for 6 months. And as you see, end of study for those that have responded or are refractory. So we only focus on people who are in a need, medical need, to optimize their care. Naftamadin is given as a pill, 1 pill for 7 days, only 7 days every month, no more. It's very simple. People continue ruxolitinib. They are given another pill for 7 days every month, whether it's naftamadin or placebo. We don't know. Nobody knows. It's a blinded, randomized study for patients who have suboptimal response. Yes, that's pretty simple to understand for 6 months. So the study actually goes on for almost a year, right? We get the patients to participate before they are given ruxolitinib. We follow patients on ruxolitinib for 5-6 months, see their response. If they're doing really well, fine. They're off the study, no need to experiment or do anything with them. If the patient has suboptimal response, still have problems with the spleen and symptoms, then those patients have a medical need to improve their condition, and we then randomize them for 6 months to receive naftamadlin or placebo on top of ongoing ruxolitinib. Yeah. So we then assess response. We assess response after that randomization, yeah, and see what is the status with their spleen and symptoms after 6 months of naftamadlin. Is it complicated study? No, it's not complicated. What happens is usual blood sample collections. We measure the volume of the spleen by MRI every 6 months, as you just heard. We assess the symptoms with the questionnaire. Every patient gets a little gadget where they put the little answers to the questions, and this is repeated as long as they're on the study. We want to actually follow the patients as long as we can, because there is a significant belief, myself and others in FDA as well, who ask us to follow the patients as long as we can to see whether there is significant prolongation of life and the prevention of a progression for which we have some indications from the prior study. So that's important part of it. The real efficacy analysis is after 6 months for the spleen and symptoms after randomization, which we compare to before randomization, and we compare it to before ruxolitinib started. Nothing unusual to any other study design for myelofibrosis in the efficacy analysis part. Now, there are much more to be said about the study. We have a website. You can see here a link, and this presentation is available to everybody. So please go to the site or clinicaltrials.gov, which lists the details that I described. And in Europe, in the right lower corner, that's new, European link, which has everything, as I said, and more, and in different languages, which is very important, actually, not just English, in different languages. Or you can email us. So that's another possibility. All this is available to the patients for possible participation. So let me stop here then. I thank you so much for giving me opportunity to explain in a short way what we are doing, where the information is, and why are we so excited about it, because we are really focusing on patients in need with a medication that has a novel study design and novel mechanism of action to be able to combine its activity with the JAK inhibitors and provide that optimal care for as long as possible and make it enjoyable for patients to live with a controlled disease, which I think is very realistic to achieve with what we know about Navtemadlin. One pill, 7 days every month, it works. So thank you so much. Open for any questions, and I can stop sharing my screen. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Maybe if you want, yeah, okay, no, it's fine.
I can put it back if you like. Yeah.
Or just these addresses which you had, so people has time to,
Sure.
not
There you go.
everybody can do the shot. One
Which
before, one
this
before.
one?
Here, this one, yeah, yeah.
This one? Yeah, this is good.
Just leave it for a little while so people can take a
Sure.
picture of it or take a note of it, whatever they want to do it. Well, thank you very much, Serge. Absolutely fantastic. What I like with you when we talk about these things, you really feel about it. You're very much terribly convinced about the new product and the new treatment, and you can also explain it in a way in order that we as patients we can understand. And I think what you have been explaining now with the pictures which you have been making, I think most of the patients they understand what you're doing, and I think it's a totally new way of trying to achieve control of what I normally says, chronification of a disease, which as far as today we don't have it. You have it in the CML, for example, but we don't have this yet, and I think this is very, very important that we can go further, and I wish all the good luck to get all the patients which you are needed. Now, I have the first question which I have and which I've been talking to patients before. Um, your limits, if I understand you well, uh, any patient who had a cytoreduction product already taken, he is not accepted in the trial. Is that right? Yes.
The eligibility only says that patients who previously were given a JAK inhibitor cannot participate, but
JAK inhibitor, yeah.
other patients who were on interferon or hydroxyurea or prednisone, they are very welcome. Any other therapy in the past is fine, except a JAK inhibitor.
Okay. Now, the JAK inhibitor, which I think the most famous one is Ruxo. A few years ago it was just given to MF patients, but in the last 1 or 2 years, and especially due to the shortness of the Pegasus delivery, uh, physicians, we switched to give the Ruxo much earlier. And sometimes if you have, I have PV since 30 years, and I have a moment where the hydroxy doesn't work anymore. So I had to switch to Ruxo with a fantastic result, by the way. But this means, when we had this, we cannot one day, if it goes to MF, I could not participate anymore. And don't you think that this is reducing tremendously the possibility for an MF patient to participate? And I just can't really understand this when I'm a patient who has taken Ruxo, but it doesn't work. I mean, it doesn't eliminate the spleen. It improves many things, but it's not, in most of the cases, it's not optimal, as you say. It's in most of the cases, it's suboptimal. So why can you not take patients which already have a suboptimal reaction on Ruxo?
Wonderful question. I mean, you are right to the point where we learn about, and that's very important for patients to understand, that the distinction between the path to approval of the medications and the real life management of the patients. If you were in my clinic and you come and you were on ruxolitinib for, let's say, 3 years, and you have still issues with the spleen or symptoms, or like you said, you did fantastic, and 2 years later, spleen and symptoms is showing up, and I have an Navtemadlin approved, I may have considered to add Navtemadlin, right, in community in a regular practice, or any other drug that would be acceptable to combine. That's the real life management of the patients. However, for approval of the medication, one needs to follow rigorous study designs that will first objectivize the group of the patients that we are talking. That means, how do you define the suboptimal response? And that means you need to follow patients before they start ruxolitinib for a certain period of time on ruxolitinib and measure the MRI and the questionnaire before and after to know in objective way what happened with them. And so that's why this run-in period of ruxolitinib alone in patients who are ruxolitinib naive, run-in period. That's why. And then you have to homogeneous population of the patients that, after having objective measurements to ruxolitinib, fulfill a definition of suboptimal response. And that means suboptimal, not feeling well, and have still some spleen. So that was an open discussion with the FDA, and we had to follow the regulation to have that objective measurements of response to ruxolitinib from the start of ruxolitinib for 5-6 months, and only then, in those patients that have suboptimal response, study Navtemadlin versus placebo. If we are successful, then perhaps in your particular case, that Navtemadlin, when it's commercially available, would be an option by treating doctor to add it on to ongoing therapy with ruxolitinib. I can't say, but you now recognize the distinction between the regular management of the patients and then a regulatory path forward for possible approval of a new medication.
So, but also means really a patient who was on ruxolitinib, uh, he, uh, he had no reaction, or he had bad reactions, or for whatever reason he had to give up, and he's back to hydroxyurea. He is also not suitable for
Not
your clinical trials. Yeah.
because that patient had the side effects or resistant, refractory, intolerant. No, the request was for a specific reason for approval of Navtemadlin to focus on the patients that are relatively newly diagnosed, if you like, have never ever been exposed to a JAK inhibitor. So you can say what this drug is being tested for patients that are ruxolitinib naive or JAK inhibitor naive and have not have optimal response after 5 to 6 months. That's what the focus is.
Okay. Well, I understand. I think it's a pity because it makes it difficult for many patients to get involved. But you know, when we know it, I just came from a physician meeting here in Spain, and we talked also about it. And most of the physicians who do have the clinical trial agreement with you, they told me that we have problems to find the patients. You know, but there are enough MF patients. I mean, that's not a problem. I call them basically on a YAC inhibitor virgin patients. So you know, this is and I think that's the biggest problem, which what I found out from the talks to the physicians in order to get these patients. But anyway, if that are the conditions, this is how it is. So I think um,
So, so Peter, here we partner and spread the word about POISE study
yeah,
and get patients to participate before they're given ruxolitinib,
yeah,
right? That's
definitely. Sorry, you know, I fully agree with you. You know, this is we have to work very hard on that. You know, we have people has to patients do have to know that you know, if they have been, let's say, on interferon and they had an ET or a PV and with the mutation going into MF, so that they know that if they want to enter that clinical trial, they cannot take any JAK inhibitor because otherwise they will be out.
yes, that's
Yeah.
true.
Okay, good. So this is how we will focus on it. Now, I think the whole it will around over 1 year or 1.5 year most probably will be the test. Yeah. Now, if at the end it turns out that the patient is not cannot take your product, can he then go back to, let's say, Ruxo or whatever he has been taking before? Is that no problem?
No problem. Well, remember, we are not stopping ruxolitinib. Ruxolitinib continues, right? They have some improvement, suboptimal improvement. They continue ruxolitinib. We are adding naftamadlin or placebo on top of ongoing ruxolitinib. Ruxolitinib stays.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then they are on a randomized part for 6 months at least, where we see about the response. And if they are benefiting, just keep going as long as there is a benefit. Nobody would stop the therapy that benefits the patients. I would not allow that to myself. That so you keep going on and naftamadlin on top of ongoing ruxolitinib for as long as there is benefit. Years to come. I hope so.
I hope so too. Yeah. Now, you know, in the chaotic times which we are having today, we don't really know how it will go with the approvals, how long it will take to get the products really being approved. What happens if you know, you have positive results, everything is okay, but you know, it's not going ahead with the approvals. I mean, if the FDA approval is okay, but then it has to be the EMA has to make it also, and when in Europe, the different countries have to do it also. Spain, for example, takes 2 years longer than in any other countries. Um, the patient, if he has a positive result, independent of all these regulation problems, he will be able to continue with your product, I assume.
Yes, no question about it.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. And when you know, we are the community of MPN that they're more and more conscious that they would like to have improvements of symptoms and also of side effects. I know that you're working on it. I know this is part of your work, which you're trying to help us with. Could you tell a little bit more about, you know, what do you know so far on the major symptoms like fatigue, on you know, on what you cannot sleep at night, or what you have night sweats, bone pain, etc. Um, do you have already some results that it is improving these symptoms? And could you tell me a bit more about the side effects?
Absolutely. So we didn't come to this study out of the blue, of course, right? There was a pilot study, this is how I call it, where we tested uh, to see what's going to happen if we add naftemadlin on top of ongoing ruxolitinib in 28 patients. And that pilot study told us that the drug can, again, on top of ongoing ruxolitinib, we are not stopping ruxolitinib, on top of ongoing ruxolitinib, adding it, it can significantly improve spleen size and significantly improve the symptoms of all types: night sweating, low-grade fevers, bone aches and pains, fullness in the belly, pain under the left rib, and fatigue. And you will recall we had many discussions about assessment of the quality of life in myelofibrosis patients, and we use the most advanced questionnaire, which is version 4 of myelofibrosis symptom assessment form that has 7 parameters there, including fatigue and all of these others that I mentioned. And with that tool, which is accepted for regulatory approval, by the way, right? We are significantly improving the number of patients having that at least 50% improvement in the symptoms on naftemadlin when it's added on top of ongoing ruxolitinib. That combination of improvement in the symptoms and the spleen, number-wise, has been the best. Another reason why I changed my job in any combination so far, and that thrill of having such effective therapy makes us super enthusiastic about proving it to the FDA and European regulatory bodies, and then in Spain, as you mentioned it as well, that this is super valuable therapy that can be given in easy, simple, and long-lasting way to improve the quality of life and the spleen of the patients. Improvement of the spleen alone, it's not going to make it, right? I mean, we discussed that many times. It
Yeah.
has to be improvement in the quality of life in combination with the spleen improvement, two factors together, and that is tied as what we call co-primary endpoints of the study, of the POISE study. Spleen and symptoms together. They always have to be together.
Yeah, I think it has been clearly shown in your presentation that you're tackling the problem in a very general way. We recently on some products which are coming out in the market, they are very specific for one or two of the symptoms, which is certainly not. It's good, but it's certainly not really the result which we would like to have. This is why I think your product is really fantastic in the way how it's being built up and how it will act. And it's, for me, as a patient, absolutely amazing the things which you can do today, what you can count, etc. So it's really it's a new world and it's very good. There are several questions here from patients. Unfortunately, several of them they are like a second opinion questions, which we are not giving in these kind of webinars here. But one person is asking, what do you expect? How long will it take until the product will be in the market? Which I think it's difficult probably to do to answer, but it's a very logical question for patients.
Yes, yes. Now, it's probably going to take about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Okay.
Because look, we need to have several hundred patients to join the study, and then they need to be followed on the study for a year. You can see first 5-6 months in ruxolitinib, then the 6 months randomized part, and that takes so that's 1 year, right? And we need to accrue several hundred patients. So I would say probably 3 years.
Yeah, yeah. Well, all the good things that take its time now. So, but I'm convinced you have a fantastic team. So I'm sure this will go as fast as possible.
We
Uh,
do.
The other question was, patients who are in process of progression from PV to MF, if they can be included in the study. I
Mhm.
know the answer, but maybe you can reply.
Yes, Okay, yeah, that's a really good one, right? So primary myelofibrosis or secondary myelofibrosis, these are the patients that can participate. Secondary means exactly what you said. After PV or after ET, these patients are welcome. They need to have a certain degree of spleen size enlargement or some symptoms. They will have the MRI and the questionnaire given to see whether they are eligible. And of course, no prior exposure to a JAK inhibitor, and they can participate. Yeah, yeah. That is the patients that we are looking for. Perfect.
Yeah. So let's hope we can arrive in time. Well, I think these are the most questions from the patients or the questions which I had from my side. It is just, when I hear about these things that which you're explaining, I think it is so important that the patient knows, how you're fighting. I mean, with this product, I think the company itself is working since many years already on it. And as you say, now it will take another 2 or 3 years until it's coming out in the market. So it's a tremendous effort. And if you see like people like you're really living with that and trying to settle it in order that the patient will have a new treatment available. But we need the cooperation from the patients because we need people to participate in the clinical trials. And I think this is something which everywhere in the world we cannot stop to repeat how important it is that patients are on the clinical trials.
Patient engagement is the key part. The companies, industry, we call it, can have valuable drugs in a pipeline and can have an ideas and even engage with the doctors for study conduct, but the key participant is a patient. And so the patient's education, patient's willingness, and after all, uh, their desire, I would say, that is also a factor in my view, to bolster their chances of optimizing their care through a clinical study are extremely valuable. Uh, we cannot pursue a drug development without the three key parts, right? The industry, the physicians, and the patients. Each actually has its role, the key role, and without one of them, nothing will happen, right? And so I have described so far how the Cartos as an industry component here and the number of clinical sites are ready for development and approval of uh, Navtemadlin. And we are now seeking global engagement of the patient community through your help and other nice community collaborations that we have with the patients to join and help us push this drug development over the goal line within that 3 years, so that eventually everybody can benefit. So it's extremely valuable what you are saying, and I really appreciate the opportunity to discuss this with you again, as we did in the past, how valuable the patient participation is.
Is, yeah. Can you tell me when did Cartos really start this project? How many years have passed already? Do you know that?
The study is only since last summer,
Yeah, they study, but I mean,
but
you had phase one and two, etc.
uh,
Previous phase.
probably about 5 years.
About
Probably
five
about,
years.
I would say 5 years, probably, if not more. The company itself is about 7 years old,
Yeah.
but it took some time for us to define the dose, the schedule, and everything that required for serious engagement in indication for which you feel there is the most a reasonable chance for a success and medical need, right? Because, as I said earlier before, JAK inhibitors are super valuable, but they have limitations in how long they work or to degree to what they do. And I have been talking about this openly from the day one of ruxolitinib and now momelotinib. It's valuable, but it doesn't work forever, and it doesn't work in everybody to the same degree. And here is the opportunity to optimize that care by adding another drug with a different mode of action. So it all follows the logical concept of uh, critical care of the patients in everyday life. And now it's transferring that understanding to a degree to the regulatory side, understanding that you need a different trial design to tackle that problem. No, not everybody needs to be treated from the day one of myelofibrosis or with two drugs from the day one. When you say, oh, you have myelofibrosis in the spleen, let's give you two drugs. No, one drug may be enough. Give it two drugs in those that need it. That's what we do.
No, really, I think it's and I really ask all patients, and we will do our utmost what we can do from our side in our work with the patients. If a company has a project which takes them nearly 10 years of spending money, working hours, and really working hard to advance it. I think we as patients, we have at least the moral obligation, but we can we help this company and we help ourselves, because at the end, if this product gets through and is being accepted and it's proven, I mean, you have most of the proofs already, but you will have more proofs where the product really works the way how you want to have it working. I think it's our moral obligation to help you and to participate in the clinical trials. Good. I think that's basically all from my side. And there is no new questions coming in either, except, as you said, real second opinion questions, which we cannot answer here on this place. So, Serge, thank you very much. It was great. I have had a lot of I learned a lot again, and it's great the way how you're presenting it. I think it has been extremely patient friendly proposal, and you can count on all our working power what we are having in order to get you enough patients in order to have the final results as soon as possible. Thank you very much for your time. We will be in touch, and
Thank you.
we might make a second webinar very soon.
Thank you, Peter, so much and your team. Wonderful collaboration. Really appreciate everything you do. And this is going to continue the lifelong friendship beyond just this project, of course, like we have done in the past. But regarding this particular drug and therapy, highly valuable. And hopefully we're going to do it together. Perhaps shorter than 3 years. I hope so.
We will do our utmost.
Yeah.
Try to put it through. Yeah. Okay, then. Thank you very much to you and to Nish and all the rest of your group. And we see you very soon again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye, bye, bye. Bye, bye.